My parents chose my criminal brother to run our family business despite my hard work. Now he's in jail for money laundering, and I'm left picking up the pieces of my life. So, about 2 months ago, my parents decided to ask their darling older son to run the business that I had been helping them build for the past couple of years. That was the point at which I decided that I was going to step away from the family business and cut all ties with my family because it was just crazy since my brother was not a good guy. I don't mean a bad person in the sense that he was mean to me at some point. I mean that he's a straight up criminal. And it's not like my parents didn't know this. They knew, they just didn't care. Because criminal or not, that's their firstborn son, and they're going to baby him forever. I'm 26, male, and my brother's 30. Right from when we were kids, he had been quite unscrupulous. Lying, cheating, and stealing were normal behaviors for him. He used to get caught quite often, so it wasn't even like he was good at it. But our parents never did anything real about it. They'd scold him a little, ground him for a few days, but they would always find a way to smooth things over. Somehow they would always twist the situation to make it seem like he was just misunderstood or going through a phase. It was maddening, especially when they'd turn around and lecture me about honesty and responsibility. It didn't take long for me to realize that my brother could do no wrong in their eyes. Every time he messed up, they'd come to his rescue like he was some kind of victim in his own messes. They'd excuse his actions by saying things like, he's just finding his way, or he'll grow out of it. But he never did. He just got better at hiding what he was doing or manipulating them into thinking he was the innocent one. I remember one incident when we were teenagers. He got caught stealing money from my mom's purse to buy some gadgets he wanted. Instead of grounding him or making him return the items, my parents gave him a soft reprimand and bought him what he wanted anyway. They even convinced themselves that he did it because he was trying to understand business transactions or some nonsense like that. Meanwhile, I was grounded for a week just because I told them they were being unfair. This dynamic set the stage for years of bitterness between us. I became the responsible, hardworking son, always trying to win their approval, while he was the rebel who could do no wrong. He knew exactly how to manipulate their emotions, and he wielded that power like a sword. I can't count how many times I watched him lie straight to their faces, and they'd nod sympathetically, like he was the one who got hurt. Our relationship was more like a war than a sibling rivalry. I didn't even try to hide my contempt for him, and he didn't bother pretending to be remorseful about anything he did. My parents, for their part, thought I was being too harsh and judgmental toward my brother. They always wanted us to be close, pushing us to hang out and bond, ignoring the fact that I had zero desire to be around someone who thrived on deception. As we grew older, I focused on my studies, my friends, and eventually my career. I tried to distance myself from the chaos that was my brother's life, but he always had a way of pulling me back in. Even when I moved away for college, the stories about his antics never stopped. There was always something: cheating a friend out of money, getting kicked out of another job, sweet-talking his way back into our parents' good graces. Then, a couple of months after I graduated from high school, I heard from my parents that my brother had been fired from his job for fraud and was under investigation. After the childhood that I had spent with him, I wasn't surprised at all because even in his teenage years, he had been quite a delinquent, and this had been coming for a really long time. For a couple of months, he was on the run, but eventually, he managed to get those charges dropped, likely with my parents' financial help, and all seemed well again. This was about 3 or 4 years ago. After my parents bailed him out by paying his company off with a ton of money, they decided to cut ties with him to teach him a lesson. It was probably the first time my parents had done something I thought was right, and I remember feeling a glimmer of hope that they had finally seen him for who he really was. Around that time, my dad asked me to help him out with the family business. I had just graduated and was looking for a job, so I thought working on my own family's business was the best opportunity. I agreed. Since then, I was the one who had been working really hard with my parents to run the business and learn the ropes so I could eventually take over. And it was always understood, at least in my mind, that I was next in line to take over when my dad retired. I threw myself into the work. I was the first one to arrive at the office every morning and the last to leave at night. I put in the blood, sweat, and tears. I learned every aspect of the business, from the finances to the client relations, ensuring that I knew it like the back of my hand. I wanted to make my parents proud, to show them that they made the right choice in bringing me on board. I was pretty sure of it since my brother was out of the picture. However, about 6 months ago, my brother reached out to my parents, saying he wanted to apologize for everything and needed a second chance to prove that he wasn't the same person anymore. He said he had gone straight and had been working legitimately for the past couple of years. He sold the story of how he had turned over a new leaf and how much he wanted to be a part of the family again. He played his cards perfectly, feeding them lines about how he was a changed man, how the time he spent away from the family made him realize the error of his ways. He even threw in a tear or two for good measure. My parents predictably ate it up like it was a gospel. I tried to point out that people like him don't change overnight, but they weren't having it. To them, he was the long-lost prodigal son returning home, and they were ready to roll out the red carpet. Despite my reservations, my parents, being the people they are, melted like ice under the sun. I warned them that this was going to backfire, but they told me that everyone deserves a second chance. I couldn't say anything more to that without sounding heartless, so I bit my tongue and played along. After all, our family business was doing well, and I didn't want to create unnecessary conflict. So he came back, and my parents were over the moon. There was a big family reunion with everyone celebrating his return to the fold. They threw a party for him and made it look like the prodigal son had returned home. Despite the festive atmosphere, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Call it intuition or just years of dealing with his behavior, I simply didn't trust him. A few months passed, and I noticed my brother hanging around the family business more frequently. He claimed he was just getting reacquainted with the family and that he missed everyone terribly. But he was always in my dad's ear, talking about how he'd changed and was looking to settle down for good. I could see what he was doing from a mile away, but my parents, blinded by their love for their perfect older son, refused to see it. Then, 2 months ago, my dad dropped a bombshell on me. He told me that he was planning to hand over the business to my brother, saying that since he was older, he was the rightful heir. Never mind the fact that I had been the one working tirelessly to build and grow it, while my brother was off getting into trouble. My dad said that he was going to train my brother, test him for a couple of months, and then start the paperwork for the transition. I was stunned. I had sacrificed so much, put in the sweat and the hours, believing I was building something that would eventually be mine. And now they were handing it all over to my brother, who had done nothing but leech off the family his entire life. I had a massive fight with my dad, pleading my case, but my mother sided with him. They tried to placate me by suggesting we could both run the business as partners, but I knew that was a disaster waiting to happen. I could never work with someone I didn't trust, especially not my own brother. I told them if they chose him, I was out, no negotiation. I made it clear that I couldn't work under those conditions. They chose him anyway. I felt betrayed, not just by my brother, but by my parents, who I thought had finally started to appreciate my efforts. For the next 2 months, I cut off almost all contact with them. I tried to move on and focus on finding a new job, but my heart wasn't in it. I was struggling with the realization that all my hard work had been for nothing. I even considered taking legal action against them for my share of the business, but I didn't want to drag it through the mud just yet. Then, karma struck. Just when my parents were gearing up to finalize the transition of the business to my brother, he got arrested. It turned out that his so-called legitimate business was actually a front for money laundering. The news exploded, and suddenly, the golden child my parents had placed all their faith in was revealed as the criminal I always knew he was. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts from my parents and other family members, most of whom hadn't bothered to check on me once since I left the business. I ignored them at first, letting them stew in the mess they had created. Eventually, I decided to confront them, expecting an apology or at least some acknowledgement that I was right. But no, instead of apologies, they asked me to help clean up the mess, to somehow save my brother and protect the family's reputation. I laughed in their faces. For once, they had to deal with the consequences of their actions, and I wasn't going to lift a finger to help them. Update 1. The weeks that followed were surreal. My parents kept calling, begging me to come back and help. They couldn't understand why I was so angry, why I wouldn't help save the family business. They even had the nerve to call me selfish, accusing me of turning my back on my brother when he needed me the most. The audacity was unbelievable. I had spent years trying to earn their respect only to be cast aside the moment my brother fluttered his eyelashes at them. And now, when he was revealed as a fraud, they expected me to swoop in like the prodigal savior. I told them that they had chosen their favorite son, and now they could deal with the consequences of their choice. Even some of the extended family members started calling me, asking why I wouldn't just forgive my brother and help out, like it was my duty to clean up his messes. It was infuriating. All these people who never had my back when I was struggling to prove myself now expected me to bend over backward for someone who had never done anything but lie, cheat, and manipulate. Update 2. I decided to block my parents after another argument where they tried to buy my silence. Yes, they actually offered me money to not testify against my brother when the trial came. My dad stood outside my door practically pleading with me, saying, "Think about what this will do to our family. We can't have a brother sending his own brother to jail." I had never been more disgusted. Here they were, still trying to protect him, still trying to cover up his messes, even after everything. I told them to leave or I would call the cops myself. I never thought I'd have to go that far with my own family. Even my mom, who had always played the peacekeeper role, broke down crying on my doorstep, calling me heartless and ungrateful. She said, "We raised you better than this. How can you abandon your family when we need you the most?" It was as if all those years of hard work, loyalty, and dedication didn't matter. I was just a tool to them, a backup plan when their golden boy failed. Update 3. As my brother's trial approached, I heard that most of our extended family had rallied to my side. They could see the truth for what it was, even if my parents couldn't. My uncle, who had always been a bit distant from family drama, came forward to support me in my new venture. He even decided to invest in my business, believing in me in a way my own parents never had. The trial itself was brutal. I was called to testify, and I told the truth, every single bit of it. I could see my parents' faces in the courtroom, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. They still didn't get it. They still thought I should have lied to protect the family name. But I was done with lies. I wasn't going to play the part of the loyal son when they never played the role of fair parents. Watching my brother squirm in court, trying to deny everything, I felt a twisted sense of justice. He was finally paying for all the lies he had told, the lives he had ruined, the pain he caused. He had fooled so many people for so long, but this time, there was no getting away with it. Update 4. The verdict was finally delivered. Guilty. My brother was sentenced to prison, and my parents were devastated. They posted nonstop on social media crying about how unfair it all was, how the system had failed their innocent son. But the truth was out, and no amount of denial could change that. Their business has since started to crumble. Employees left in droves, their reputation in ruins. The empire they had built, the one they planned to pass to my brother, was falling apart. All the while I was building my own dream. I secured more investors, including a few friends and family who saw the truth and launched my business. My business is still in its early stages, but it's mine. And for the first time in my life, I feel truly free. Free from the toxic cycle of favoritism, free from my brother's shadow, and free from the disappointment of parents who never saw my worth. I'm finally living for myself, building something that I can be proud of. And no one can take that away from me. I've come to terms with the fact that my parents may never change. They'll always see my brother as their beloved son, even if he's proven himself to be a liar and a cheat time and time again. But I've also come to realize that I don't need their approval anymore. I'm my own person, capable of creating my own legacy, far removed from their toxic influence. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this journey. I needed to find my own path, and your words helped me believe that I wasn't wrong to want more for myself. This is just the beginning of my new life, and I'm determined to turn it into something extraordinary. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our stories and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating tales and new content every week. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate every one of you for being a part of our storytelling journey.